under more scrutiny. And what I do.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Now we're going to talk to old friend Eleanor Clift from Newsweek. She's written the piece, Baucus Buys Time. Did the Baucus bill sell out progressives, move the ball forward, or both? Eleanor, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Glad to be with you.
Great to have you here. I have a clear answer to that question, but I'm curious as to what your answer is. What do you think he did here with this bill?
Well, I think he's a weak leader, for starters. I mean, the Democrats really needed a strong quarterback to get this bill through, and I think this is basically the lowest common denominator that he could find, and it wasn't common enough to bring anybody aboard. I mean, the Democrats on the committee don't like it, and the Republicans don't like it, but now there will be a marathon session that I guess begins tomorrow. It goes over the next week or two, where all these amendments get offered, and the Democrats will try to strengthen the parts that they don't like, and the Republicans will try to further weaken parts that they don't want to go through at all. So it'll be another, test of will between the two parties, and we'll see how Baucus manages the amendments. I hope he does a better job than he did managing the bill. I mean, after a year, this is what he came up with. It was pretty pathetic.
On the other hand, I think that he's in a bit of a tough spot, and I'll tell you why I think that. And I'm very interested in the process. I want to get to that as well. Of course, we're talking about Max Baucus's health bill that's coming out of his finance committee, and it came out with no Republican support, and it does not include the public option. It does not include a number of things that progressives were looking for in the bill. The reason I say he's in a tough spot, Eleanor, is because those Republicans were never going to sign on to any bill. So how is he going to sell out to the corporate lobbyists, which he desperately wants to do, without Republican cover?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. A number of Democrats, of course, hide behind the Republican, skirts, if you will, because they don't want a bill that compromises their connections with these various interests, and they can always say, well, the Republicans won't go for it, so therefore we're powerless. And the notion that Obama can sort of hold his breath and stamp his feet, I don't know what he can do, what kind of, withhold invitations to state dinners. I'm not quite sure what power he has. His willingness to campaign with people, or to rally on the Democratic side. It's not the 1960s anymore, and everybody, including me, has invoked the LBJ comparison. And I was reminded that LBJ had 67 Democrats. Now, some of them were Southerners, like Georgia's Senator Russell, some pretty major figures on the Democratic side, but they were roadblocks too. But still, the head count was 67.
Well, that assumes that Obama wants to get as strong a health care bill as possible, and I'm definitely not convinced of that. I'm not saying he definitely doesn't, but I'm certainly not convinced. So let's tackle the process a little bit here, because that might enlighten the motivations of the different people involved. So if this was really to get Republican votes, and it turns out you didn't get any Republican votes, well, shouldn't Max Baucus and the people at the White House who are backing him then say, all right, well, since we didn't get any Republican votes, I'm going to go ahead and put the public option, as an example, back into the bill?
Because the way Congress works, believe it or not, some of those Republicans may still be gettable. I think down the road they will be. And if you put the public option in, I'm not sure they could get the votes to get the bill out of committee. I mean, now we're talking about getting the bill out of committee, and if you get no Republican votes coming out of committee, and you have a handful of the Democrats not supporting it, then you can't get it out of committee. I believe that's what happened to Hillary Clinton. She never got her bill out of committee, and therefore it doesn't get to the floor. And I don't think you can go ahead without the Senate Finance Committee on board, because they are the vehicle that decides how the bill is paid for.
I want to get back
to
we're
into process here.
Yeah, no, and I think I think that process is really interesting. So I want to come back to the role of the Senate Finance Committee in a second, but isn't the main problem that the Democrats have on that committee right now, whether it's Baucus or Conrad, as two prime examples, is that they no longer have political cover, saying, what could I do? The Republicans made me do it. Now, if they put the public option back in, as Rockefeller wants to, on that same committee, then they got to face the music and say, no, I don't want the public option.
Right. Senator Conrad has never said, I don't want it. He always says it can't pass the Senate.
Right.
So
now he doesn't have that cover.
He would be exposed. I'm not sure about any of the others, what the actual head count is and how they've declared themselves on the public option. Mostly, we read about Mary Landrieu and Blanche Lincoln. I'm not sure either of them are even on the Finance Committee. That's broader. Conrad's thinking is even if they get it out of the Senate Finance Committee, they can't pass the full Senate. So, because he's looking at the others outside the committee.
Yeah, I don't believe him at all.
Yeah.
I don't. I think that he, along with Max Baucus, who takes nearly $3 million from the healthcare industry, it's not they're like, they're wringing their hands. I'm so concerned about how others might vote on the public option. No, they're concerned because they want to keep their lobbyist paycheck. So,
right.
I don't know why we're not considering that as a possible motivation when it seems evident that they take an enormous amount of money from those guys. And then, as you write,
you can make that charge sort of broadly and say, look at all the money they're getting, and they're more responsive to these interests than they are really to the national interest or to their president.
100%.
But it's when you start going into individual motivations, then it becomes sort of fratricide within the Democratic Party, and
it gets
and the
uncomfortable.
Republicans can have a wonderful time looking on.
No, I don't think so. Well, the problem is it gets uncomfortable. Okay, because
it gets uncomfortable. Exactly.
It does, but I don't mind making it uncomfortable because they're very comfortable taking the money right now.
Well, I like it when Move On and some of the other organizations that have really spotlighted the connections that create the context for the votes these people cast. I think that's very good, and when they go in the districts and they expose it, and I think they've had some luck with that.
And as you say, as you write here in the piece, Eleanor, we're talking to Eleanor Clift of Newsweek. The bottom line is, industry loves Max Baucus's bill, and I'm guessing that that's not a coincidence that he wound up writing the bill that they love.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it is considered here in Process Central in Washington that it's a marvel that all these special interests are still on board because, again, the doctors were always against, the AMA was always against health care reform. The insurance industry is quietly lobbying against this, but they're not running Harry and Louise ads. The pharmaceutical industry has made a deal. So this is considered progress in Washington, but you have to ask yourself, why? And they're being kept there because of the banquet that's being spread out for them.
Look,
I see all that, and yet I don't know how you upend. This is the system we have evolved into because of this insidious underwriting of campaigns through the campaign contributions from the industries that Congress should be overseeing. And so it's Congress then oversees with a blind eye.
The minute we saw the Baucus bill's version, I came out on the show and I said, look, let me get this right. He's going to ask for a mandate, right? That was, in fact, before it came out, there was a leak. He's going to ask for a mandate that everybody get insurance, but he's not going to provide them a public option. So then, of course, the insurance industry is going to love that because then everybody has to get private insurance and they don't have any choice.
Right.
It's their dream come true. Why would they be opposed to it?
Right.
So, I know that there are some other concessions and they say, okay, you twisted my arm, but they seem exceedingly happy with the results.
Right, and if you get insurance reform where you do, force them not to have a lifetime cap and the pre-existing conditions and everything, but they will charge for all that. They're not going to give that away free.
Yeah,
and
no,
so they'll pass the costs on to consumers. And
they've already said it.
Yeah, the Rockefeller complaint now, J. Rockefeller complaint, is it's basically amounts to a middle-class tax increase.
I think that's exactly right. And, that's why you can't call these guys like Baucus and Conrad conservative Democrats. because if they were actually conservative, as I used to be in the old days, they'd care about fiscal discipline. And Conrad talks a mean game about fiscal discipline. But the public option brings down costs. It doesn't bring costs up.
Right.
So they have no argument. They have no excuse. And they're exposed for in my opinion, the corporate shills that they are. And that game's been going on for a long time. Now we get to the final point, which is, which side is Obama on? Because we see reports from the White House that he cut these deals with big pharma and hospitals. Those are, obvious. They're on the record pretty much.
Right.
And then it appears that behind the scenes, when negotiating with all these different interests, that they, were wink and a nod. Yeah, you're right. We won't go in that public option direction. They focus all of their finance, all their eggs in the finance committee basket. So this is Obama's bill just as much as Baucus's, the way I see it. And so, show me how I'm seeing it wrong.
Well, I think Obama does shy away from combat. And I thought that David Axelrod foreshadowed that beautifully in the memo that he wrote in 2006 when Obama was considering running for president, and he told him that he would have to face something that he didn't like, and that is personal criticism on a sustained basis. And he said, I don't know that you can handle that. I don't know whether you're Muhammad Ali or Floyd Patterson. I mean, I think there's a lot of rope-a-dope in Obama, and if this turns out better than it looks like it's going to right now, we'll praise him, I suppose, for his attitude and the way he handled it. But it looks like he doesn't really want to offend anybody, and so that, and he's also looking at the realities of a committee that is stacked with small state, rural, red state conservatives, even though they call themselves Democrats. So I'd like to think that he get this out of the Senate Finance Committee. It still has to be blended with the other bill. And the House bill is, of course, and those are three bills that have to be fashioned together. I think if there's significant uptick in public support for a public option and stronger reform package, that Obama will be stronger going into this. That's why he did 5 shows over the weekend, and he needs a little wind at his back. I mean, I don't think he
Eleanor,
can't generate it all by himself, and he may not be willing to.
But Eleanor, how much more public support can there be when polls show that about 77% of the American people are in favor of the public option? Does it need to be 87%? Does it need to be 97%?
I know those polls show it, but all the intensity seems to be on the other side. I mean,
well, that's obviously manufactured. I mean, I can get 10 people to scream like lunatics.
Then the other side needs to manufacture a little, too.
I don't disagree with you there at all.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be something. I guess suddenly we're living in a democracy where every issue is framed by the cable news networks. I mean, they don't have big audiences, but all the mainstream media take their cues from the cables. And they've really reset this debate in a way that's very negative towards Obama and the progressive side.
So in the end, do you think there's any chance that Harry Reid takes the Finance Committee version and the Health Committee version, the Ted Kennedy version with the public option? He has, if I'm not mistaken, he has very broad authority to make it any version he likes at that point.
Yes, he does. That's right.
And is there a chance there that he goes, you know what?
I think there's a chance, but again, we started this conversation with my remarking about what a weak leader Baucus is. Harry Reid's no prize either, unfortunately. But I think he might be listening. There are more. I think there are more progressives in the Democratic side in the Senate than there are conservatives or centrists or whatever they call themselves. Corporatists. And if they're determined that they're going to go, that they give up the bipartisanship and determine they're going to go the 50 vote route, the 51 vote route, I think Reid, maybe Reid will surprise us.
Is there any
maybe
chance?
He'll be like when the night John Ashcroft, or when Janet Ashcroft, refused to let the Bush people do something, and suddenly there was a John Ashcroft we never knew existed.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Right.
And I'm always holding out hope. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. A final thing on this is a matter of logistics and how the process works is, so if Harry Reid decides that, hey, you know what, I'm going to, like we laid it out here, I'm going to go strong. I think there's public support for this. I'm going to put the public option in there. I'm going with the Ted Kennedy version. Okay? We put it in there, and let's go. Now, everybody in Washington...
Well, I don't think he goes with the Ted Kennedy version. I think he has to pick from column A and column B. There's got to be. He can't just run complete roughshod over Baucus.
I hear you.
So I don't know where the compromise is, but
let's say if he's going to be strong, he includes the public option.
Yes.
If he doesn't,
okay.
then he's not really strong, right? So he goes strong, right? Everybody in Washington believes that you have to go through reconciliation if you're not going to get the 60 votes. But couldn't they do something where they say, hey, you know what? You can vote any way you like on this bill, but you're not allowed to join a Republican filibuster of it. So if you're a Democrat or you caucus with the Democrats, this is a bright line issue. And if you join a Republican filibuster of the most important item on the president's agenda, well, then there are going to be consequences. You're going to lose your chairmanship,
okay,
et
this
cetera,
I like. Yes, I mean that's logical. He's just asking for their votes on a procedural matter. Of course, everybody knows that it would open the door to a Democratic victory. But do you really want to block majority rule? I mean, he can shame them, and he better than Obama can exact some real consequences. Taking a committee chairmanship away would be very strong medicine, but that would be a good threat if he could follow through.
Well,
and but there are other ways that he can punish. That's right. He could make it a party line vote.
I would hope that he at least considers that, because I think that that's probably the smartest way to go.
Right.
As far as procedure is concerned.
Yeah, pluck the public option, stick it into the Baucus bill.
Yeah,
right.
Why not? Why
not?
And look, I'm not naive. I don't think that the healthcare industry is going to walk away with nothing here. I know they're going to get something, right?
Right.
And they're probably going to get a lot, but we have
about 40 million new customers.
Yes,
that
exactly.
ought to be good enough.
That ought to be good enough, and we got to get something, because if we don't control the cost, this whole thing blows up on everybody.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
All right, Eleanor Clift, great piece in Newsweek.com, and thank you so much for joining us. Really
thank you,
appreciate
too.
it.
Bye.
All right, we'll be right back. Young Turks.